are an expert more so on how the climate's affected in the ocean. Is that kind of accurate? So, assuming that the percentages that he quoted from the European Union are correct, with China polluting that much, do you think that negatively impacts the ocean?
Most definitely. The carbon dioxide molecule knows no political boundaries, and it's being cycled through our atmosphere, into the ocean, into our plants.
Well, then you might want to do a little digging on China. I want to go to Mr. Schellenberger next. Mr. Schellenberger, there are some radical mandates and reforms that are disguised as solutions to the changing climate. Green New Deal comes to mind. Does that sound familiar?
I've written about it extensively.
You've written about it extensively. Yeah. It is estimated to cost about $39,000 per household in electricity costs alone. Factor in the healthcare, transportation, housing parts of it, and that one single piece of legislation is estimated to cost about $93 trillion total, give or take a few $100 billion. Reckless spending, in my opinion, is not the answer. Let's use Germany as a model. They made the decision, as you're probably well aware, to phase out both nuclear and coal plants. They spent 32 billion with a B euros per year on renewable energy between 2014 and 2018. What do they have to show for it? A mere 40% of the electricity supply is now renewables, and hardly any zero decrease in emissions, hardly. Massive spending is not the answer. Radical reform is not the answer. Nuclear, who knew, just might be part of the answer. Would you agree, yes or no?
Absolutely.
That's even better than yes. So my question to you is this. What are the major hurdles preventing nuclear from being the cost-competitive solution in the United States? And please don't say Democrats. We're in an open hearing here.
Well, in short, the short version is there's a number of factors, but one of the main problems in the United States has been that we have many utilities, and what that means is that we've had many different operators and many different plant designs. So the economics of nuclear are really simple. The way that costs come down is by standardizing the same design, having the same people build it over and over again. That's the only way we know how to reduce costs. Also by increasing the size of the reactor. That's what's worked to reduce costs in France and South Korea, even in some parts of the United States. So that's a major obstacle. And like I mentioned, it's also been the fear of nuclear. So the way that the anti-nuclear folks drove up costs was through lawsuits and regulatory ratcheting, which delayed construction and drove up the costs. So this is why I want to warn against, I think there's a lot of wishful thinking that we're going to get some new design that's going to solve these problems, but what really matters is a long-term commitment to building the same kind of reactor over and over again, preferably with the same construction managers.
Are you aware that with the argument that the problem is storage of the waste, that's the major problem here? It's what we do in America. Of course, I'm sure you're watching the ongoing debacle about Yucca Mountain. I'm sure you've been paying attention to that. Did a little research, and there's many types, as you know, of radioactive waste. The United States only has one facility engaged in permanent disposal of nuclear waste, the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant in New Mexico, which permanently stores certain forms of radioactive waste generated by the DOE during research and production of nuclear weapons. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So we've got to get better at that. We've got to come to a consensus on how we're going to handle this waste. And then we have the ultimate green energy. Would you agree?
I agree, and the only caveat I would add is that I think that the fear of so-called nuclear waste, which is just the used fuel rods, is again just a displaced anxiety around nuclear weapons. As an environmentalist, nuclear waste is the major environmental benefit of nuclear power plants. It's when you go to take an environmental studies class, the first thing you learn is that the perfect environmental production methods store all of the waste at the site of production. Only nuclear does that. Solar panels create 300 times more waste than nuclear. It's all going to go to landfills.
Say that again.
Solar panels produce 300 times more waste than nuclear. It's all going to go to landfills. Only nuclear contains all of its own waste product. The nuclear waste has never hurt anybody, never should hurt anybody. It can all fit on a single football field stacked 50 feet high. As an environmentalist, this is the holy grail of energy production.
Thank you for that. Madam Chair, I yield back.